Ladies and gentlemen, today we enter a journey into the hidden depths of the human soul. Have you ever noticed how life begins to flow effortlessly the moment you stop struggling, stop worrying, and simply allow it to unfold? It may sound paradoxical, but as Carl Jung revealed, worry is not strength. It is the ego's disguise, a mask covering our fear of uncertainty. From the moment we are born, we are taught to control, to calculate, to plan every detail of our lives. Yet, the tighter we hold on, the more life slips through our fingers. In this exploration, we will uncover Jung's timeless insight, that worry does not prepare us for reality, it distracts us from it. And beyond this fog of anxiety lies a profound freedom, a deeper intelligence, a mysterious order of life itself. This is not about shallow optimism, but about awakening to the truth that when you stop worrying, everything begins to fall into place. Have you ever noticed that everything suddenly becomes easier, smoother, the very moment you stop worrying? It sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? All our lives, we've been taught that to succeed we must plan meticulously, fight relentlessly, and control every detail. Yet the truth is, the tighter we cling, the more we try to control, the more life slips through our fingers. Carl Jung, a profound explorer of the human unconscious, pointed out that worry does not make us stronger. On the contrary, it is a defense mechanism of the ego, a way to mask our powerlessness in the face of a stark reality. Some things will never be within our control, and in that moment of clinging, we drift away from the present, away from ourselves. Letting go, in Jung's perspective, is not surrender or helplessness, it is an act of awakening. When we cease worrying, the energy trapped in control is released, and surprisingly, life guided by a hidden intelligence begins to arrange itself in a strange and mysterious order. But the question remains, why does something as simple as letting go become the path to true freedom? And when we stop worrying, what truly happens within our soul? In today's video, we will dive deep into Carl Jung's philosophy to unravel a seemingly simple paradox, why everything falls into place only when you stop worrying. But let's be clear, this is no magic pill. Ceasing to worry means confronting the voids you've long avoided, the shadows you feared. Yet it is precisely in that moment that you touch a freedom deeper than any assurance. The freedom to live as your true self, without pretense, without force. Number 1, the psychological mechanism of worry. The ego's trap. Worry is like a thick fog cloaking the mind. It blurs everything, turning the ordinary into threats, convincing you that if you stop planning, stop controlling, you'll plummet into an abyss. But Carl Jung argued that worry is not the necessary preparation we often believe it to be. Instead, it is a cunning deception of the ego, making us think we're in control of life, while in reality, we're imprisoned in an invisible jail of our own making. The ego operates like a frantic jailer standing guard at the door of the unconscious. It despises uncertainty and trembles at the thought of things beyond its ability to predict. To maintain the illusion of control, the ego produces worry as a shield. It's like an incessant alarm blaring, reminding you, if you don't prepare, if you don't calculate, if you don't control, you'll be destroyed. Ironically, this very alarm drowns out everything else. You no longer hear your body, your intuition, or most certainly, the voice of the self, the deeper essence within you. Jung once said, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." In this light, worry is a form of mild neurosis. It doesn't truly resolve pain, but merely substitutes for experiencing that pain directly. Instead of embracing uncertainty, we try to evade it through spirals of anxiety. But just as painkillers mask symptoms without curing the root illness, worry only conceals the problem, never bringing true peace. Think of those sleepless nights when you toss and turn, your mind racing like a fast-forwarded film. What if they don't reply to my email tomorrow? What if I fail the interview? What if this relationship falls apart? Each what if is a seed planted in the fertile soil of your imagination, sprouting into a dense forest of catastrophic scenarios. But have you noticed while your body lies safely in bed, your mind wanders through worlds that don't even exist? That is the essence of worry, abandoning the present to live in imaginary nightmares. The ego loves this. It feels important when it's at the wheel, even if that wheel isn't attached to any vehicle. Worry, then, is a form of false labor of the mind. You feel like you're doing something useful, thinking, calculating, predicting, but in reality, you're just draining your energy. It's like running on a treadmill in a gym. The more you run, the more exhausted you become, yet you never truly move forward. In Jungian psychology, worry can also be seen as a distorted mirror. It doesn't reflect reality, but magnifies and warps it, making us feel more fragile than we are. For instance, a student facing an exam might spend weeks F-teating. I'll fail, I'll ruin my future, everything will collapse. but from an outside perspective, it's just an exam, a learning experience. Worry transforms a simple event into a catastrophe. Much like a carnival mirror distorts the reflection of the person standing before it. The danger lies in how worry becomes a habit. When the brain grows accustomed to reacting with anxiety, it automatically seeks out triggers to worry about. Even when everything is fine, the ego whispers, "Maybe disaster is coming and I just haven't seen it yet." It's like someone constantly bracing for a storm. So much so that even on a clear day, they hear imaginary thunder. Thus, the mind becomes locked in a state of perpetual false alarms. Jung saw a deeper truth here. Worry is not just a psychological reaction, but a manifestation of our fear of the inner darkness. Instead of sitting still to face the void, the uncertainty that is life's essence, the ego creates worry to avoid it. It's like a child afraid of the dark, who instead of sitting quietly in the room, runs in circles, turning on every light. But that light is never enough to dispel the fear, because the fear lies within, not in the room itself. For example, many people worry incessantly in love. They cling to their partner believing that losing them would lead to collapse. But in truth, they're not afraid of losing the other person. They're afraid of losing the part of themselves they've unconsciously projected onto their partner. Security, validation, meaning. This is the ego's game. It forces you to worry about hiding a painful truth, the inner emptiness you've never confronted. Worry, therefore, is not merely a negative emotion. It is a signal like smoke rising from a burning room. It indicates something inside needs attention, but instead of entering the room, the ego often chooses to turn on a fan to blow the smoke away. Thus, worry never ends because the root cause continues to smolder beneath. Jung emphasized, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When we fail to recognize that worry is merely a veil, we let it steer our lives and call it destiny. But in truth, it's a destiny scripted by the ego, not the self. To put it vividly, worry is the rein the ego ties to your hands. It convinces you that letting go will send the horse galloping wildly. But in reality, the horse is the natural flow of life, powerful with its own rhythm, capable of carrying you far beyond the ego's imagination. Only when you realize the rein is unnecessary do you begin to feel free. Worry is not our natural state. Children, before they learn to fear, can play in the rain, fall, and laugh. They haven't yet learned to construct terrifying scenarios in their minds. As we grow, as the persona and ego take hold, we adopt the habit of anxiety. This shows that worry is not an eternal truth, but a learned mechanism, and anything learned can be unlearned. Thus, when Jung says that when you stop worrying, everything falls into place, he isn't suggesting shallow optimism. He's pointing out that worry doesn't truly prepare us. It is merely a product of the ego, the frantic jailer terrified of the unconscious darkness, and only by looking directly at this mechanism do we begin to escape the mind's most cunning trap, the illusion of control. Number 2, the essence of letting go, not laziness, but awakening. But beware, letting go is entirely different from the laziness or surrender many mistake it for. It is not the act of a defeated person, but the choice of someone awakened. Imagine a swimmer panicking in a whirlpool. The more they struggle, the more exhausted they become. The more they flail, the deeper they sink. Then in a moment of desperation, they stop and suddenly realize their body can float when they cease resisting. Letting go is like that, not abandoning life, but halting the futile struggle against it. Jung saw letting go as an act of profound wisdom, requiring trust in an order greater than the small self. In our modern society where human value is often tied to productivity, achievement, and control, letting go is easily labeled as laziness. Someone who rests, who doesn't rush or compete, is immediately suspected. Are they falling behind? Do they lack ambition? But letting go in the Jungian sense is the opposite of stagnation. It is an active state of observation and presence, rather than being driven by the ego's fear. The one who lets go doesn't do nothing. They act, but from clarity, not panic. A practical example, many artists share that their best works didn't emerge from force, but from moments of release when they stopped trying to create something great. Musician Paul McCartney said, "The melody for Yesterday came to him in a dream, not during hours of strained effort." This shows that when we let go of the ego's compulsion, I must produce something extraordinary, the subconscious and unconscious have space to offer something miraculous. Perhaps this is the moment to pause and ask yourself, when was the last time you allowed something to come to you naturally without forcing it? If you're willing, share in the comments to listen again to the true voice within. Letting go is like opening a window in a stuffy room. While the ego pulls the curtains tight, believing it's protecting us from dust and storms, it's actually depriving us of air. Once the window opens, fresh air rushes in, light pours through, and we realize the world isn't as threatening as the ego painted it. Far from laziness, this is an act of courage, daring to leave the safety of control to connect directly with life's true rhythm. Jung also emphasized that letting go means refusing to identify with outcomes. When we act but believe our worth lies in results, in success, in recognition, worry will always return. Letting go is a subtle shift from I act to prove myself to I act because I am myself. A poet writes not for praise but because the poem is the true breath of their soul. A lover loves not to possess but to experience the vivid presence of love. This is the fundamental difference between laziness and awakening. Laziness is refusing to engage, while letting go is engaging without needing to possess. Picture a bow and arrow. The ego clutches the arrow, fearing that letting go will mean losing everything. But letting go is the moment you release the string, letting the arrow fly toward the direction its inner energy has built. If you don't release, the arrow stays stuck, never reaching its target. Likewise, when we let go of control, life has a chance to reveal its inherent order. This doesn't mean passivity. On the contrary, letting go demands heightened awareness. A mountain climber knows they can't control every gust of wind or loose rock. They prepare, train, and then on the mountain, they must trust their intuition and the life around them. If they try to control every element, they'll exhaust themselves and fail. But by knowing when to tense and when to relax, they harmonize with the mountain. Letting go, therefore, is a form of practiced wisdom. From a psychological perspective, letting go is a shift from the ego's dominance to the self's guidance. The ego thinks in linear logic, if A, then B, if B, then C. But the self operates in the logic of symbols, intuition, and holistic connection. And we let go. We stop trying to solve life's equation with formulas and allow inner images and feelings to guide us. It's like standing before an unfamiliar forest. The ego demands a detailed map for every step, while the self urges you to listen to the sounds, observe the paths, and let your feet find their own rhythm. In therapy, many patients who try to heal quickly end up stuck. But when they accept that healing is a natural process, that emotional wounds need time, recovery begins in that very acceptance. Letting go isn't rejecting treatment, but ceasing to demand instant okayness. Jung called this an act of trust, a belief in the wisdom of the unconscious. In essence, letting go is the realization that life is not a machine we can program, but a river we must learn to swim with. The lazy person sits on the bank, refusing to enter the water. The controller flails, fighting the current. But the one who lets go flows with the stream, swimming and feeling, and thus reaches farther shores. If worry is the ego's false alarm, letting go is the act of silencing it and listening to the true stillness. In that stillness, we hear the self's voice, gentle, patient, yet persistently guiding us toward truth. This isn't an escape from life, but the first step toward living authentically. So when Jung says letting go is the key to everything falling into place, he invites us into a state of full presence, doing our best without identifying with outcomes, loving wholeheartedly without needing to possess, living fully without demanding life bend to our will. This is the delicate yet profound difference between laziness and awakening, a difference that shapes the entire quality of our existence. Number 3. The root cause of worry: identification with expectations and images. If letting go is a form of awakening, then conversely, worry always stems from blind identification. We equate our self-worth with the expectations and images that we or society have constructed. This identification is the fertile ground for anxiety to proliferate, because once we believe that I am my job, I am my relationships, I am the image others see, any crack in those structures becomes a direct threat to our existence. In Jung's view, this is one of the ego's most dangerous illusions. Instead of recognizing ourselves as a vibrant, flexible, ever-changing entity, we shrink ourselves into a single mask. He called this mask the persona, the social costume we don to be accepted. Initially, the persona serves a healthy function. It helps us integrate, play our roles in the world. But the problem arises when we forget we're only acting. At that point, the persona ceases to be a tool and becomes a prison. Take the example of a successful man in his career. He is admired by colleagues and his family is proud. But inside, he is often exhausted by constant worry because he has identified I with the mask of the successful person. A small failure, a single criticism, and his entire world collapses. He no longer sees it as just an event in life, but as an attack on his very identity. Here, worry doesn't come from reality, but from the rift between the image the ego protects and the inner truth. The same happens in love. A woman might worry endlessly about whether her partner still loves her, checking messages hourly, analyzing every tiny gesture. In truth, she's not just afraid of losing a person, but of losing the image of "I am lovable, I am chosen." Love, in this case, becomes a mirror for self-worth. When that mirror shakes, the entire psychological foundation shakes with it. Jung believed this was the mechanism of projection. We don't see the other as they truly are, but project onto them our expectations, our unhealed lacks within ourselves. We turn them into characters in our inner script, and since no one can perfectly fulfill a script that isn't theirs, worry becomes an inevitable consequence. It's like watching a movie where the characters refuse to follow the script you've written. Disappointment is unavoidable. Behind this mechanism lies a painful truth. We don't worry about reality, but about reality not matching our ideal image. The ego whispers, "Everything must be this way. I must succeed, I must be loved, I must always be strong." But life rarely operates on musts. That discrepancy becomes the source of suffering. Worry, in essence, is the gap between expectations and the present. Imagine holding a perfect crystal vase that you treasure immensely. With every step you tremble. What if it falls? What if it cracks? That fear doesn't come from the walking, but from the obsession with preserving that flawless image. Those identified with the persona are the same. They become jailers of their own crystal vase, their self-image, and live in constant tension. This is also why many feel perpetually not enough. When the persona is inflated, the ego turns life into a stage where one must perform endlessly. They are no longer allowed contradictions, mistakes, or changes. And this not allowing spreads worry like a silent disease. They're like exhausted actors backstage, yet they must step out smiling so the audience doesn't notice. And perhaps this is the moment for each of us to pause, to ask ourselves, are we protecting real life or just a mask? If tomorrow all the titles, roles, and images we cling to vanish, could we still recognize who we are? An honest answer will reveal how we've been living all this time. Jung reminds us that the persona is merely a bridge between the outer and inner worlds, never the whole person. But when we fully identify with the mask, any crack becomes a catastrophe. A small rebuke can cause sleepless nights. An ordinary failure can turn into an existential crisis. Worry here isn't because the event is too big, but because we've magnified it to threaten our entire identity. Identification with images also leads to a paradox. The more we try to maintain perfection, the further we stray from authenticity. A leader, a phrase. Aid of being seen as weak will never dare share their insecurities, thus living in isolation. A woman worried about keeping the image of the perfect mother won't allow herself fatigue or anger, thereby accumulating hidden stress. Worry becomes the natural consequence of this split between the real self and the permitted image. It's clear that the root cause of worry doesn't lie in external events, but in internal identification. When we place our entire worth in the persona and expectations, any change in life becomes a fatal blow. The ego whispers, "If this image shatters, you vanish too." And we believe it, trembling as we protect that image every second. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Indeed, as long as we cling to the persona, we'll never dare look at our inner complexity. But the paradox is only when we dare release the image do we approach true wholeness. Worry, in this sense, is a sign that we're living for expectations, not for our essence. Number 4, the transformation process from worry to inner freedom. So the question arises, how do we escape this trap? Jung suggests that the way out isn't conquering worry but transforming it. And this is a process, a subtle psychological journey where one moves from the darkness of anxiety to the light of inner freedom. This process doesn't begin with outward courage, but with quiet inner recognition. When worry surges, the ego's usual reflex is to suppress it, bury oneself in work, seek validation from others, or mask it with busy activities. But Jung encourages the opposite. Pause and observe worry as a psychological phenomenon. This is like standing under an awning watching a storm instead of fleeing it. The storm may rage, but when we stop identifying with it, we realize it's just part of the weather, not the entire sky. For example, someone fearing rejection in a relationship. On ship, instead of trying to control the other, they turn inward and ask, am I really afraid of losing this person or of losing the feeling of being loved? That simple question can reveal a deeper layer. Worry isn't about love, but about the void within oneself. This is the first step of transformation, looking straight at the root, not just treating the symptoms. After recognition comes confrontation. Confrontation means allowing oneself to fully experience the emotions previously avoided. Jung once said, There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Awakening always comes with pain, as it requires touching our dark parts. When we dare sit still with worry, it may manifest as fear of abandonment, failure, or being forgotten. These emotions initially flood like waves, seeming to drown us. But the paradox is here. The more we allow them to pass through, the quicker they dissipate, leaving an empty but serene space. Once through confrontation, a turning point occurs. The energy trapped in worry is released and redistributed. Jung called this the shift of psychic energy. Instead of channeling all vitality to protect an image, we begin to have energy for real living. The person once anxious about work may discover joy in creation, no longer obsessed with proving themselves. The one who worried about holding on to love may learn to love freely, realizing they no longer need the other to affirm their worth. This is the stage where anxiety begins to transform into freedom. A young artist left a message after watching a Jung video on our channel. Before each exhibition, he worried to the point of losing sleep and appetite, fearing lack of recognition. But one day, instead of resisting, he allowed himself to feel the fear of ridicule. He realized this fear was tied to childhood memories of comparison and denial. When he embraced that emotion instead of fleeing, his creativity gradually returned. Now the exhibition is no longer a competition, but an act of sharing, and paradoxically, when he stopped obsessing, his work was warmly received. This exemplifies the transformation process from worry about image to freedom in presence. In Jung's view, inner freedom isn't a state of no more fear, but the ability to let fear exist without being dominated by it. Like a surfer, they don't need calm seas, they just need balance on the waves. When we learn to stand firm amid worry, we discover a deeper, quiet strength. Jung called this contact with the self, the true center of the soul beyond the ego. Imagine a dense forest. By day, light floods it and we navigate easily. But at night, the forest becomes threatening, every sound evoking anxiety. If we only linger at the edge in fear, we'll never know that deep in the darkness lie streams, meadows, and abundant life. The transformation process is daring to enter the forest at night. At first trembling, but as we go deeper, our eyes adjust to the dark and a new world unfolds. Inner freedom isn't staying in the light, but venturing into the dark to discover another light, the one emanating from within. It's important to understand that transformation doesn't happen in a magical moment, but in a chain of small daily experiences. Each time we stop fleeing, stop reacting automatically, it is a step. Each time we accept failure without equating it to our worth is a step. Each time we sit still with worry instead of extinguishing it, it's a step. These small steps over time create a major shift from a self imprisoned in anxiety to an essence of inner freedom. This process is also like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. The caterpillar thinks it's dying as the cocoon envelops it, but it's actually transforming. Worry is similar. When we let it envelop us, it can feel suffocating, but if we dare stay in the cocoon, we'll see wings forming. Inner freedom isn't escaping the cocoon, but completing the inner process until one day the wings unfold. Carl Jung once, he said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." When we stop letting worry define us and choose to become the observer, the learner, we enter freedom. Anxiety may still appear, but it's no longer a prison. It becomes a teacher pointing out where we need healing, where we need to return to ourselves. In summary, the transformation process from worry to inner freedom is a three-step journey: recognition, confrontation, and release. Each step demands courage, as it forces us to look at the truth instead of the image. But through this, worry ceases to be an enemy and becomes a door to growth. And when that door opens, we enter a different space where the ego stops steering and the self guides. That is freedom. Not freedom from life, but freedom to live fully within it. Before continuing, if you feel this journey touches you personally, take a moment to support the channel with a like and subscription. It's not just a way to not miss future content, but also a small commitment to yourself to continue walking the path of transformation and inner freedom. Number 5. When we stop worrying, everything is allowed to unfold naturally. And precisely when this release occurs, a curious phenomenon begins to emerge. Life seems to know how to arrange itself. The paradox lies here. The less we force, the more easily things fall into place. Imagine a garden. If you tug at a young plant every day to make it grow faster, you only tear its roots. But when you water it, nurture the soil and let time and sunlight do their work, the seedling naturally stretches upward. Life is the same. When we stop forcing, stop worrying, we create space for its natural rhythms to unfold. Letting go of anxiety doesn't mean losing control. It restores to life the right to flow according to its essence. Jungian psychology suggests that within each person lies a self-organizing principle, what Jung called the self. This is the deepest center, both the core and the compass of our being. When the ego dominates, we see only chaos as it incessantly demands it must be this way, it must be that way. But when the ego steps back, the self has a chance to emerge, and we begin to notice an invisible order. Seemingly disconnected events start to align. Opportunities appear at just the right moment, and the pieces of life gradually fit together. A common example is those moments of flow the state artists, athletes, or creators experience when they immerse themselves in their work without obsessing over outcomes. A musician who stops worrying about the audience and lets the music flow creates a piece that captivates in unexpected ways. A runner who ceases fixating on performance and tunes into the rhythm of their breath suddenly finds they run farther than ever before. When anxiety dissolves, the energy trapped in control is freed, and life unfolds like a seamless stream. On a spiritual level, this is akin to a lake calming its ripples. Only then can it reflect the sky. Worry is like ceaseless ripples distorting the image, preventing us from seeing the full picture. But when we let the lake settle, the sky appears in its entirety, and we realize the truth was always there. We just hadn't given it a chance to reveal itself. Life in a state free of worry becomes a clear mirror, reflecting the essence of things. Interestingly, when we stop worrying, the change isn't just internal, but external too. Someone who once feared failure upon letting go often finds success more attainable because they act from clarity rather than fear. Someone who dreaded abandonment when they release their obsession builds healthier relationships as their love is no longer bound by possessiveness. Recall the experience of many students before an exam. When consumed by worry, they cramp, stress, and their memory falters. But when they finally let go, accepting they'll do their best, knowledge flows effortlessly in the exam room. This isn't luck, it's a natural functioning of the mind when no longer choked by anxiety. Similarly, in love, we sometimes exhaust ourselves trying to hold on to someone, but when we stop clinging, that person has the chance to stay with us willingly. And here lies the paradox. True love exists only when it's free to leave. From a psychological perspective, this phenomenon can be explained as follows. Worry keeps the nervous system in a state of tension, activating the fight or flight response. In this mode, clarity and intuition are stifled, but when we let go, the nervous system returns to balance and higher functions. Creativity, connection, and understanding can operate. In other words, when we cease worrying, our body and mind become fertile ground for natural growth. It's crucial to understand that stopping worry doesn't mean stopping action. It's not about giving up, but shifting our approach. The person who stops worrying still works, loves, and builds their life, but they act from a state of presence, not fear. They're like a rower listening to the river. When the current surges, they steady the oar. When it calms, they ease up. This rhythm of action is no longer driven by anxiety, but by harmony with the flow of reality. Jung called this the alignment of the ego and the self. The ego doesn't vanish. It simply stops acting as a dictator. It makes way for the self, the holistic center to guide. In this collaboration, we begin to feel that life isn't something to be forced, but a natural process unfolding through us. Inner freedom becomes a resonance with that very flow. When this happens, a subtle yet profound shift occurs. Anxiety is no longer the master, but a passing guest. What once caused panic becomes a signal to observe, and in that observation we discover that the world operates within a larger order beyond the ego's plans. Here we truly grasp Jung's words. When we stop worrying, things don't suddenly work out as we want. They work out as they were meant to. So the question for you is, in your current life, which river are you trying to dam? Which garden are you tugging at to force growth? And if you paused, relaxed, and let life unfold, what might bloom? Perhaps the hardest part isn't letting go, but trusting that life knows how to function better than our calculations. This isn't a journey for the impatient, for ceasing to worry isn't an instant technique, but a practice of presence. It's about returning to each moment, listening to the body, the intuition, and gradually realizing that what we thought was dangerous is often just the shadow of images we've constructed. Inner freedom begins at this point, when we distinguish between reality and illusion. The wonder lies in this. When we dare release our grip on the imaginary steering wheel of anxiety, life carries us farther than we ever imagined. Then we no longer race against life, but live with it. In the rhythm of a river, the breath of a forest, the light reflected on a still lake. The final question isn't how do I stop worrying, but am I brave enough to trust the rhythm of life itself? If the answer is yes, then the moment you let go, a new space opens. A place where life is no longer a burden to control, but a journey to experience, to trust, and to fully inhabit. And so, as we reach the end of this journey, let us pause and reflect. The essence of Carl Jung's teaching is not that life will always be easy, but that our suffering, our fears, and our endless worrying are not meaningless. They are invitations. They call us to awaken, to release the illusion of control, and to trust the deeper rhythm of existence. When we learn to let go, life does not collapse. It arranges itself with a wisdom beyond our imagination. The storm within us quiets, the fog clears, and the self, the true center of the soul, emerges with clarity. This is the gift of Jung's insight. Worry imprisons, but letting go liberates. Your task is not to conquer life, but to live it fully, courageously, authentically. And perhaps in that sacred act of release, you will discover that the freedom you were searching for has always been within you.